Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Kimberly Cloud Show. I'm your host, Kimberly Cloud. I have a very special guest here for the show today, and I want to give him the full attention that he needs to get his message out there. And I wanted to go ahead and introduce him by having him introduce himself. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself, where you are, and where you're calling from?
Sure, I'm Jael. I'm an original Jesus music artist from back in the early '70s, and I'm calling today from Windsor, Ontario, Canada. That's where I live, at least most of the time. But I've been living and traveled most of the world. I do a lot of I've lived a number of years in the States and been in California and Texas and other places, Oklahoma. So um, some good. There's lots and lots of things that I could say. I guess to introduce my life, I kind of started writing music when I was 14, and I kept in the business. I think from then on. Um, I'm 65 now, and the industry is. Um, I'm still working in it. I'm making
Guess
music.
what? I don't mean to cut you off. I don't mean to cut you off real quick, but we're the same age.
Oh, is that
You
right?
don't believe it. You don't
No,
believe it. Let me tell you.
no,
I'm
that,
38. 3 plus 8 is 11, and you're
uh,
65. 6 plus 5 is 11. So
well,
we're
there you go.
interlined. So continue. Continue.
Yeah, that's a very creative way to even the playing field, but and I appreciate it because it makes me look good. But anyway, uh, so bottom line is that you know throughout my career, I've done a lot of things. I've written a lot of books. I've made some films. I've done crazy stuff, right? And I teach and I preach, and I used music in the beginning as a platform to gain an audience. And I worked that way for about 10 albums. And then I kind of went into, I left Jesus music because what I felt was that Jesus had left Jesus music. They turned it into some sort of, Christian thing that made it an industry that I don't think was what God intended for it to be. So I just sort of left it alone.
Elaborate.
I went
Elaborate.
into I became known as the parable singer because my point was not to leave Christ behind, but to leave the religiousness behind. I didn't want to, I just wanted to be relevant. When you go to an art gallery and you look at an artist who paints, and if all you saw him ever paint was the head of Christ, you would go, this guy is technically fine, but he's not got much vision and he doesn't understand much about the world. And I guess that's how I felt about my music. I wanted to say things that were relevant to most people. The last album I just finished was called Feeling Used Yet. And it was really about the impact that government restrictions on freedom had on COVID and all of the things that happened. And so, for a person to go ahead and look at that. And that album, by the way, is downloadable on Bandcamp. If you go to jl.bandcamp.com/album, and then slash, you just type in the name of the album, which is feeling.used.yet, or not dot, but hyphens, just put them in between the three words of the title, Feeling Used Yet. And you'll get there, and you can download that album or at least listen to it. And you'll see what I'm talking about. I want to be relevant to what's going on in the culture at this point, and I always have. So that album is actually my 103rd release, and it will be my 107th album recorded. So, like, I've done a little bit, and I've hung out with some crazy people you'd know. But, um, that's kind of the past. All of those people are going away. And like I said,
Can I
Jesus
ask you
is
a
going away.
question?
And my real goal is to make him happy, not to make the world happy. The world is coming to an end.
Can
He's
I
not.
ask you a
So
question,
we're
sir?
going to be together for eternity. That's a long time.
Can I ask
Anyway,
you a question, Jael?
sure.
Um, the people that you've met, the people that you've met,
Right.
over the years, you've been able to experience their world, their culture, their
Yep.
individuality, and then you came back to Christ. right?
Well, the point, I guess, I'm not going to say that, I'm this model of a saint, because I'm not. I'm definitely a sinner along with most of the rest of the world, or all the rest of the
Hmm.
world except him. But I guess the point is that it was never um, a thing where I really tried to leave. I didn't want to leave my faith or my relationship with God. Um, and it's an interesting thing because, like, my background religiously, my mother was Jewish and became a Christian, and so I was raised in a Christian home, and my faith was pretty solid, but it was also very well founded on the understanding that the Bible mattered. And so we spent a lot of time, learning, and that's what I teach today. Actually, overseas, I teach it, and I teach business overseas to help people kind of get away from the idea that they need a missionary handout, that they can actually do something and build something in their own culture, in their own way, and to succeed. And so we're working with Kenya, and we're working with Uganda. I have business projects in Ghana and in Malawi and a couple
What
other
made you
countries.
want to work in Africa? Like, how did you just say, hey, I think that we should work in Uganda?
Well,
If nobody gave you applause, you deserve it.
no, it's a different world. I'm not in the standard missionary world. I was just going along, being a musician and being an artist, writing books, doing stuff, and I would come in contact with people, and they would simply ask me for advice or help. And so that's kind of how it started. I got in by talking to people who were in those countries, and I guess my original contacts were in Nigeria, and it just sort of spread from there. We just kept going. I I've just never seen, especially since the internet, there really are no international barriers. So when you have a business that's reaching out to help people establish business, if your contact comes from Africa, they come from Africa. It wasn't a choice that I made. I think I work as much in India as I do in Africa, and a little bit in Pakistan. Not, these are things that uh, I don't know. God puts them together. I don't.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I know you want to cry. So I wanted to know, your journey, if you had to change anything, what, if you didn't have to change anything, whether you change it or not, what would the audience need to seek from your advice that you have to give to them today? I'll give you the floor to talk. I
All right.
apologize for cutting you off. So,
Well, here's the thing. This is something I haven't mentioned yet, but about 3.5 years ago, I had a stroke. And to look at me now, you would not know it. I mean, I don't have the impediments that a lot of people do. You would recognize it if you spend time with me. I don't have balance. I'm sitting right now in a wheelchair, but not because I have to have a wheelchair, just because I got comfortable in it and it became my best office chair. But anyway, the point is that um, I don't stand well. I don't walk well. I had to have an operation on my throat in order to speak. I still get confused a little bit with words, and yet that's my stock in trade. That's what I do best. So I started a blog called The Restoration Zone, and it's available on Facebook. You can go there as a group. It's the Zone group, and I basically am talking to people about that no bad thing makes them a victim. They can rise above whatever circumstances gets handed to them. And my own struggle backwards is not necessarily, God's not going to fix every problem everybody has. My brother just had a stroke a few days ago, and he's not doing well. He's doing a lot worse than I am. But I struggled back. I had a lot of people tell me I wasn't going to make it. They would come to the hospital and push me around in a wheelchair because I couldn't talk, I couldn't walk, I couldn't do anything, and I couldn't eat. They were feeding me through a tube in my nose, and I was months like that. And then I fought back. So um, there were many things I did to, assist my own recovery. I don't put it all on God's shoulders and say, you either heal me or don't. And I didn't. So I was very proactive, but I also didn't not ask him for healing, you know, and I do credit the fact that all healing is divine healing. It's not like people don't get better just because everything in the world runs down. It gets worse. It doesn't get better on its own. So the very fact that humans heal and that animals heal, this is a hand of God on our life. So anyway, that's how I see it. Anyway, so
So, I mean, it's like what you said, I have to critical think that you've been through so much, and my heart seriously goes out to you because this is a man that has a soul. And yesterday I was talking about on my page how, people can make mistakes, even high up people. So if people can make mistakes, if God made a mistake with Satan, if God made a mistake with certain stuff, we all make mistakes. So when God created us, some mistakes was made, based on the DNA structure of our bodies. But that didn't mean that our souls inside of us isn't stronger than a typical person. You do way more than me. You even correlated how many emails you had in your account. So you're very, very well smart. You're very smart.
well, I have
Now, everything on this earth perishes. Everything, even I will
yeah,
perish one day.
yeah.
So nobody can sit up there and I feel 100% times infinity sorry, and I feel pity. That's my feelings because I'm like, oh my God, here's a man that is singing, that is multi-talented, that done hung around the greats, that is, you know, declining little, and I hate to say it, but the positives are you leaving your legacy in a positive way. I know God is smiling. I know Jesus Christ is smiling. I know all the angels are smiling. I know all the watchers are smiling over you.
I'd like to think that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't think God made any mistakes, even with Satan. I think that was very much on purpose, and I don't think there was it's kind of like this. But when you're serious about your faith, there are tough questions, and you don't want to be, I don't want to be trite or excuse those kinds of things. And if somebody has a question like that, it's like that doesn't make them, uh, you know, a problem for me. I enjoy people who do that. I mean, here was a tough question came up today. Guy said, "Did Jesus ever pray for Judas? And if he did, what did he ask God to do with Judas? And if that happened, how did God answer Jesus in a positive way when you look at the end of Judas's life?" And I come to this. I come to an understanding. I used to be, theology likes to divide these lines and claim these kinds of knowledges. There's people who claim to be Calvinists who think that God predetermines everything, and there's people on the other side of the aisle that think, oh no, human beings choose everything, and then God sort of reacts to that. And I just look at it this way: that God said He wanted to create choice, and He's powerful enough to do that. So I don't argue with the choice, and I also don't argue with the fact that He already knows everything, and it's impossible to surprise Him. So with given that, it says that who He foreknew, He also predestinated. So I don't get into the argument. It's like, who cares? Why do you think you have some choices at some point in your life? Then did you ever make a choice? Then why argue whether it exists? It's like, I don't want to get into the religious argument. I want to get into the fact that I have a relationship with my creator. and the Jesus claimed to be the creator, and he was the creator, and I can show you in the Bible where he said that, and and so there's like a lot of Muslim friends that I have, and I talk to everybody across every kind of religious barrier, denomination, whatever. I talk to pagans. I talk to African witch doctors. So, I mean, it's like, okay, um, I'm easy when it comes to having a discussion. So long as people are honest and people are looking for something, we'll talk. Um, I feel privileged in what I've gotten to know of God from God Himself through His Word, through His Bible. That's pretty much it. And I don't make excuses for him. I don't make apologies for him. I just let him be who he is, and I am who I am. And I've made terrible and tons of mistakes and lots of problems I've created.
Can I
Don't
ask
blame
you a
him for that.
question?
That's my choice. You know,
You said you've made mistakes, right?
right?
So that means that it's a possibility that even though our God is all knowing, all powerful, whoever you worship, the head honcho up there that's running
Okay.
the show, I have reason, my opinion, even though I'm not trying to influence you because that's
Yeah.
wrong, that would be wrong. God, he did make, or whoever God is, made a mistake, because if God did not make a mistake, the only mistake God created beautiful omniverse, but it's like the mistake he made is causing people to die prematurely on earth. And I'm not blaming God for why the people are dying, but this is a God-like activity going on. And I don't think God would want this to happen. I think it's out of God's control, because the way things happen in the universe, where, he can predict it happen this way, and then it goes left or right, based on the choices we make. So,
Okay. So
what's your
so let me
understanding?
ask you a couple of questions about that idea.
Okay.
Okay. If an all-powerful God wanted to actually make a creature that had um, was not a robot, but would be able to choose to worship him or not. Um, and yet, he knows that if the creature makes decisions that are against the way the world actually is that he created, that they're going to experience the consequences of that. If I were to protect everybody from every consequence of every choice would mean nothing, because it wouldn't matter. You could make any choice you wanted, but God did not make a world like that. He made a world where choice would matter, that people could choose to worship him and fellowship with him and be in touch with him or not. But he can't. There's a sense in which, when you say an all-powerful God, he has all the power he wants. But here's the basic difference. I don't believe in a God that ever wanted to be in control. I believe in a God who said, I'm going to set up authority in the world, and
Thank you.
through that
I
authority I'll
feel that
govern.
way too. Yeah.
Through that authority I'll govern, but control is Satan's counterfeit of God's authority. And the idea we have is that somehow, if God doesn't fix all the problems, then he's not in control, therefore he's making a mistake. I don't think that's true. I think God is saying, no, I set up authority to work, and it will work. It'll always work, and you will suffer consequence if you fight me. And that's what we're facing.
Understood. Very powerful. You done been around a lot of people, and I'll take your word for that. Definitely.
Well, it's
Yeah.
you learn when you have a relationship with God. He's able to teach you. And I made all kinds of stupid choices and bad errors, and I had wrong thinking. When I was 14 and I was a Jesus musician, I was out to save the world, but I was extremely naive. And I think some of the things I said, I look back on, I cringe. It's like, did I actually write that? Yeah, it's in their music, it's there. It's,
I
you know, but at the same time, it's like, okay, I grew from that, and it wasn't all wrong. It was like the intent was great, and it was just fine for a 14-year-old to say that. I mean, because the 14-year-old doesn't have a lot of wisdom. And there you go. So, but it's a matter of, it's a matter of, that's what's wrong with our whole popular culture, is that we think, the 14s and the to the 20-year-olds are the people to listen to. It's like we give them celebrity status and then a microphone. That's why you have a, Greta Thunberg out there, because, you know, obviously she's got so much to say. She's got so much wisdom and knowledge of the world and how it works. That's just silly.
Only way to be smart, that smart at 14 is what they call either gifted or you've been around for 14 years, a guru or somebody who is very highly intelligent and have been around a lot of people.
I have discovered that you can be very intelligent and make very stupid mistakes.
I agree. I
It's not a,
agree. Yeah.
it's not an issue of intelligence. It is an issue of wisdom. It's an issue of, and people say, how did you get so much, how do you make such good choices? You said, well, experience. How did you get such experience? Well, making bad choices. So that's what it is. You live,
I
right?
finally get that saying. And if y'all out there listening to him, listen to him. How do you make good decisions through bad choices?
You learn.
Oh
It's
man.
experience gained from the thing. The only problem I have with bad choices as a teacher, I mean, I would rather watch somebody else make the bad choices or learn from somebody else making good choices. I'd like to learn vicariously if possible, but we all have to go through some of those problems ourselves. The real thing about, gaining wisdom is that if you can listen to the voice of God, you can gain all the wisdom you need. The problem is most of us don't want to. We just don't want to. We'd rather make our own choices. Thank you very much. And learn the hard way. Well, you know, the, the hard way is the hard way. And it will always be that way.
That's what gets me very happy and feel blessed because I'm like, I'm able to get on here and talk to you guys, especially, they say never to talk about religion or politics, but our point of view matter in this world. We have to read something and then correlate with our thoughts and our ambitions of what our choices might need to be. That Bible is the foundation, and I understand that to what our positive and negative choices and rebuild our negative choices back to positive choices. And that's what the Bible is there for. What is your opinion?
Well, wisdom says that my opinion doesn't matter much. um, I kind of have this idea that um, God can speak for himself. And if more of us would get into what he had to say to us, we'd figure it out. And so that's, I guess, what I would do is I'd point everybody back to it and say, go read your Bible and find out who he is, and let him speak to you himself. And that's the very best wisdom you can get. So, anything I'm going to hand you is going to be colored by my viewpoints and my ideas. And some people think, if you're Christian, then you're into this, hard right wing conservatism. And to some degree, I think there are hard right conservatives that are correct. And, but I listen to people who argue, there's the whole Marxism capitalism debate thing, and I say capitalism is not without flaws, and the Marxists are really good at pointing out those flaws, and they make Marxism look good because they keep criticizing the flaws in capitalism. But let me tell you why. Marxism does not allow for a world with God, and therefore they're always going to have a problem. The capitalists believe that God is permittable, and because God is permittable, the Jews have an interesting viewpoint on this. I mean, they believe in the elevating the world to God, and that is why the pursuit of things is fine, and because what they're doing is helping God, you know, maintain or steward His world, and that we've lost that idea. We've kind of not even realized that that's what we're here for. Um, that we're responsible as stewards to give something of increase to God, and so it's like as we go through this process of of um, working and aspiring for something, capitalism allows a person to know that God exists. Well, the problem is that if God exists and he's impacting the capitalist who allows him to impact him, he's not always going to make choices based on greed.
Yes.
It's not that he never does, and that's why sometimes the Marxists are right. But often, because capitalism allows for him, it's a better system. Because Marxism says, no way. Everybody has to believe the same thing, and God doesn't figure in our world. And that's why they're always going to end up with Venezuela's and Cuba's and Russia's and Chinese communists and all the other things that you see as negative and are anti-freedom and anti-people and more about the collective and it's just not a way that anybody wants to live when they're in it. If you're on top of it, fine. But if you're in it, it's not so good.
The capitalism and the Marxism, you actually taught me something. So I'm guessing if I had to do an intelligent SAT question, and then we're going to move to where you see yourself in the future, because we can go on for hours talking about this. I would love to have you on hours. But I wanted to ask you, if I had to ask a educated guess, that would be capitalism is like Republicans, maybe?
I would no, I would say, look, there's a lot of Republicans that, in my opinion, are nothing more than Marxists in disguise. Here's why: the government, as it exists right now, believes that they can spend money on things that they think are of high moral value, and that's just not their role. It's not their money. If they understood that the respect for um, ownership or stewardship of God's resources belongs to the people that God gave it to, they would not try to confiscate things and redistribute anything. They would go, oh, okay, that's not our role. Our
Give
job
me
is
a
to see that.
verifiable source, because I don't want this to shut down on my system. So what you just said, you said that the government is not their money, and you're right. It's our money because to the penny and less than we're
Yep.
spending tax dollars, our tax dollars on stuff like Ukraine. When people are going on vacation in Ukraine, the president that was a prior actor
Hmm.
going on vacation with his family while there's a war going on in Ukraine.
Yep.
That makes no sense.
Well, there's lots that don't make sense, but what I guess my point is this: that people will always have their own opinions, they always have their deals. And the idea that, you could take a party and say, well, this is the good party and that's the bad party, I don't think that's true. I think you have to look at principles. You have to look at individuals because that's who makes up the parties. And you have to say, are you committed to your principles or not? And if they're committed to their
True.
principles and you agree with their principles, vote for them. I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, it's got to be this way or that way. That kind of politics I won't talk about. I will talk about what the role of politics ought to be. There are people who say, well, look at the definition of politics, break it down. Poly means many, and ticks are blood-sucking creatures. And so you realize that those two things come together, and politicians are many blood-sucking creatures. You get the whole point.
Wouldn't to piggyback off what you said, I would like to talk about what should happen. I think that there should be um, a good politician that comes into office one day in the future that haven't been in an elite status or haven't been whether capitalism or Marxism, because they learned everything from scratch. They didn't have go to prestigious colleges or whatever. They just came in and they respected the authority of what the government stand for. They respected everything and they want to do the right things, integrity, doing things when no one's watching. I have that. And I hope to predict in the future that somebody can come in, because I don't want to ruin your feed, and help guide this United States to a better, more flourishing state, versus people, like, I don't want to talk about the negative, but I just want it to flourish. I want people
Yeah.
to grow. Everybody has a chance and
Here,
deserves.
here is the point. Nobody is beyond the redemption of God if they will turn to him. The question is, will they? And, there's a lot of people really enjoying their privilege and their positions of power and that don't want God to take any of that away from them. Therefore, if God has no permission to do anything he wants in their life, they're actually not for, really fit for the positions that they have. On a human level, they're just not. And so it's only when we understand that, you know, life is short and we don't have an awful lot to, it's kind of like putting your hand in a bucket of water. You take your hand out, you really don't notice much difference. And that's the way a lot of people are. It's like they're not going to leave much of a mark because they're just in the crowd and they're just, stirring the pot for a while and then they're gone. And they don't have eternity in view. And I think the people who understand that they're not building something for here, they're building something for forever. Like I look at my music, right? We had a fire a few years, not a few years, last year, about a year ago, almost to the day, and it destroyed most of my work, most of my albums, most of my history, most of everything, my covers, all my paintings, my posters, all this stuff was all back there in an outbuilding behind my house. It was interestingly, we did our best to store it so that it would be there for generations, and it's not. It's all gone. And so I have about, I still have a prodigious amount of material available on the market. It's probably, 16, 17 albums worth, but I've done 107 for crying out loud. It's like, you got to see that that's a big loss. So we went through that and it taught me something about the eternality of it. It's like, I thought, that maybe, leaving some music for posterity would be something longer lasting than me. But it's not necessarily. People told me that invest in things that don't perish, like your education. Then I watched my dad get Alzheimer's, and I realized that's not true. You can have that taken away from you. Um, it's only what lasts in eternity that's going to matter, and then that's why you go to God and say, God, what do you want me to do?
Can I ask you a question? I got two suggestions. Before I say those suggestions, I just wanted to let you know that I was thinking the same thing when you said, some people don't leave their mark. Some people don't even leave a legacy. Some people do drugs all their lives and don't change, and they probably even live to be 100 years old.
Yeah.
And and then you got people that do nothing but destroy the earth. But there's people like you and me that have been through normalized stuff, challenging stuff, and done live to tell a tale. And in your era, you're hitting the mark for the people older than you, younger than you, and your age. You know,
Well,
um, it doesn't take much to get your audience genre to like your stuff. But my suggestion to you is to get a time capsule. If you have children, get a time capsule and put your most special things in there, and
mhm.
then put it somewhere, something big. But also, not only the time capsule, but I feel like you should start adding layers. I haven't heard your music, but I
Oh,
spoke to somebody prior. I spoke with somebody prior than you, and it just rung a bell. I said, well, while you finish the rest, hopefully infinite, your life on this earth, I feel that you should add uh, a frequency. I don't know if you do this already. because we haven't touched it yet, but
Mhm.
frequency of healing, body restoration type thing to your music. Have you ever thought about that?
Well, yeah, when I became when about 10 years before my big stroke, that'd be about 13 years ago, 13 and a half years ago, I had a couple of TIAs, and that kind of scared me. The TIAs are transient ischemic attacks, and what that is like a mini stroke. And so certain parts of my brain were affected, and it really scared me. And I thought, I need to have some answers. So I decided I was going to be start over again at 53 or 50 52, and be a doctor. And so I started with some online courses, pre-med, and got into some med courses. And then I realized very quickly this was not the direction I wanted to go. So after about a year of study of that, I went and switched into natural medicine, into being a naturopath. And so I began to look at things, and certainly when you're studying natural medicine, you can get like some real crazy stuff introduced into the natural medicine world. And some of it I rejected pretty quickly. But one thing I did find interesting was the was healing music. And so I have done quite a lot of study on it. I am a qualified naturopath, but I'm not a licensed naturopath now. I chose not to be when I realized what the government would do in terms of restricting me from helping people. So I said, forget it. I don't need your license. I don't need the threat of a organization over top of me. It's threatening censure if I say certain things, and I don't want to do it. So that's what I kind of like. I'm a musician first, and I've always been a musician. So I thought, okay, well, I have enough medical knowledge now to help my family, help some other folks that I come in contact with. So I do. But yeah, I do pay attention to that musical healing thing.
Cool. I like that. And that'll draw people to your music. I'll talk to you off of here, but the last two questions, because we're low on time. Where do you see yourself going with the music, with your story, everything?
Well, I've started this 4 album set called The Great Reset Chronicles. I've got, 2 of them virtually finished. One is out, and, the other one the one that's finished will be out next Christmas, and I will be doing one in the middle, one that I'm working on now. And so, and then, of course, one for 2004 should I still be around in 2004, which I think God will let me finish this series. I don't see myself slowing down or stopping until I have to. So I know there's a time when it won't be possible to do the music anymore, but I'm still writing music like a fiend. I think like I wrote 11 songs last week. So that gives you an idea. Um, I've been writing since I've been 14, and that's why I have about 3,000 songs in my catalog. Um, there's a lot of uh, I think what's happening is I'm liking what I'm writing more because number one, I'm gaining in knowledge all the time about theory and about frequencies and about lyrics, the wisdom that comes with age. I like what I'm writing now versus the stuff I wrote at the beginning. And I spent about 10 albums, well, actually more than that, probably about 13 albums in the Jesus music field in the beginning. And then after that, I kind of started writing stuff that the general radio audience accepted for a while. And then, I had a few charted positions, like a lot of other artists that I hang with. And that was nice and thrilling at the time, but it doesn't mean much now. Most people haven't heard those songs. Some do remember them. Um, And then, as I've gone on, as I've gotten older, people they fall away. They stop listening. They have other priorities. They don't buy music anymore. The kids buy music and they look at me and they go, "Well, you're old school now." And when I did my first rap album, um, it was a, it was
That's a wrong way to think.
well, everybody was shocked. It's like, you are you kidding me? I mean, how old are you? And you sounding like that. It's like, so, but even that now, like you listen to that rap now, and it's like, yeah, you're old school, man. It's like MC Hammer days. It's like, okay, yeah, I'll plead guilty. I don't stick with the genre. I don't know the nuances of the flow of what's going on now in that field. That, like, I didn't commit my life to that. I'm not a stylistic guy. I wrote country records. I wrote folk records. I wrote rock and roll records. I wrote blues records, and I keep changing it up. I love doing that. I love experimenting in new
That's
ways.
a true, that is true gifted. That is a very true gifted person to switch up genres. That's talent. People out there, musicians out there, stick to, like, rappers stick to rap, you know, what is it? Christianity people stick to Christian music, jazz people stick to jazz music, but you blended it over the
Uh,
years as you evolved.
and even now, like when you listen to one of my records today, uh, I I will tell you, I like what I like about rap is I love it as like I call it the salt and pepper on music. It's like it's a flavor that you put into things, but I don't want to dominate a record anymore with like just a rap record. So I have a sense in which I'm blending everything on every album now. So people ask me, what style of music are you writing? It's like, no, it's not about that. It's about the message in the music. And I write albums like I write books. It's like every song is a chapter, and if you pay attention, you'll read the book, and you'll start with the first song, and you'll get to the end, and you go, I understand what he's doing. It's like a novel. It unfolds. It's developmental. So it may range. I may have a reggae song at one point, and it's next to a folk song, which is next to a gospel song, which is next to a blues, heavy blues number, or it just is going to be all over the map. What I want it to do is to communicate something, and I would like it to be available and accessible to everybody, knowing that not everybody's going to like the whole album. They're going to actually, pick. If you listen to my albums as entertainment, you're going to want to pick and choose certain songs and go, yeah, I like that, but you won't like the whole record. I guarantee it. And it's okay with me because I like the whole record, and that's why I do it.
It's funny because it's like, you, oh man, I wish, okay, so where can I find, where can I find all of your music? I want to hear your first and your newest record. Oh my
Well,
God,
like I say, a lot of
your
it got
first
burned up in
CD
the
and
fire.
your newest CD, huh?
A lot of it got burned up in the fire. And I can't give you my newest music. I've got like a cassette that I've actually taken into the studio from early stuff from like the first three albums or something. And I've tried to rip it down and rebuild it because of the technology today. It's actually possible, but it's extremely expensive. And the music, like I said, I'm not that happy with it. It's pretty, some of it's pretty naive, some of it's pretty good, but it's really hard to do. So rather than spend the money on that, I would rather produce something I'm doing today, and that's where the money's going at the moment, is to new material, not old stuff. So I can't do that for you, but I can give you stuff from probably as early as 1979, which would be well, that would be like my ninth or 10th project. I think was the first vinyl record in '79, and it was actually recorded earlier than that. So that would be pretty early stuff. I don't have a lot of that where I could send you and say, go listen to it here. But I
You know
have a
what?
lot of
You know
the,
how we're gonna listen to your music today? We're gonna listen, do what you do the best, which is talk about it.
well,
So
you can
I
go right now to Bandcamp and get my last album, and you can hear all the culmination of where I'm at right now. And you're going to hear every style under the sun on that record, including some very tongue-in-cheek, but it's very political and it's very religious. So anybody who not religious in the sense of, I'm trying to convert anybody, but there's a sense in which we recognize God through it, and we criticize government's involvement where they don't belong. And we say, get out of the way. We believe in free speech. We're artists. We've always believed in free speech, and we've crowed about it. And when that free speech led in negative directions for our culture, we accepted it because it was free speech, and we fought for free speech anyway. And now that it wants to lead in a different direction, those same people we defended are now being super critical. The distribution of that album was blocked. We got censored. It was like, yeah, we put it up there, and somehow or other, when they went to distribute the record, all the songs just magically disappeared off the internet.
When something like that happens, it's because you're telling the truth. It's not free speech, it's
I'm there. Well, what's happening now is that we finally, 1 year after it was really valid and critical, 1 year they're sort of relaxing, and they've told me now that they will distribute it on February the 19th. So the album will come out on like Spotify and everything else, but it won't be until then.
Can you do me one last favor? Because I have to know, since your first CD was burnt in a fire and we still got people coming on, what I want to know, take me back to that first, not CD, but first cassette or first
Yep.
vinyl, whatever it's called.
Okay.
Where you made it.
That would be probably 1971, maybe.
Tell me about the first song, your first creation of the first song.
Okay,
What
well,
was you thinking?
I can tell you about that. I was 14. I was on my porch, and I had a friend that was a drummer, and he came over and we said, let's start a band. And I didn't know anything about it. Couldn't play anything practically. I had an old, really clunker acoustic guitar, and I knew 4 chords, and they weren't in the same key. But I put them together and I put some lyrics to them, and I said, there you go. It was like, and it was really atrocious. And years later, I took it apart and I figured out how to nuance it and make it actually into a tolerable song. It's not good. But the very first good song I wrote was like my 25th song, because I remember it. It was like, this is actually a really good song. And so I played it for some pros that I knew that were friends of mine. And actually, one of them signed me to the label he was on, got me signed there. And it was the very first one. When I played it for them, the 2 guys that were playing in the band were Albrecht and Rolly, guys on Ron Moore's label in those days. And they went, oh, that's really cool. And so they started playing with me and harmonizing with it. And here I am playing with these guys that had albums out. It was like every teenage kid's, dream come true. So we went from there into Ron's studio and did the first 3 vinyl records. And that would also be in the 70s. That would be back, probably the last half of the 70s now. But the first things that were out were like, written in 71.
What did you write about?
In those days, I wrote about being a wannabe rock star.
Okay, that's the first stage.
Yeah, right. And then
your life.
But the very first song that was a good song was a song called Christian, He's in You. And I think it was really kind of an early stage of a kind of a praise and worship song, but that's before there was even the genre around. People didn't do that. And so I kind of was just giving that sense that, we have a responsibility to God in that song. And that was the first one, I think, that actually made sense musically to me. And said, I want to keep this. I want to keep going.
Okay. I hate to end it here, so I'm going to ask you, do you have anything else spiritual or whatever you want to talk about for 2 minutes or less that you want to talk about before we end it with how can the people reach you? But you can add that into the conversation because that's your next question. So 2 minutes to tell me anything you want to talk about with the people to get them encouraged, and how can the people reach you?
Here's the message, I guess. After having had a stroke and being counted out completely, they said, you're never going to recover from this. It's over. And if you do, you're going to be, severely handicapped. You're going to be a victim for life, and you need to take this medication for life and so on. I realized that they don't have all the answers. Number one, I have a big God. Number two, and I don't need to be limited by somebody's opinion, and you don't either. I guess that's the fundamental thing, is that you don't need to be limited by somebody's opinion. Connect with God, find out what his opinion is, and you can do anything that he suggests that is left for you to do. And the real mark of leaving something isn't that people know what you did. It's that God knows what you did. And when you stand in eternity, it'll last.
Wow, God knows what you did. I like that saying. Some people forget that God knows. So, how can the people reach you?
Well, I would suggest, like, the best thing to do is to go to the Give, Send, Go platform. And there's a way in which, we're asking for donations to help support the cause. And yes, we need help to keep the music going, to keep all the things, because we give away more than we sell. Music today isn't really a marketable commodity, but we need people who believe what we believe to come along and support us regularly. So givesendgo.com/JL band, JAEL band, and you'll get to where you can do that. What I love about the platform is they don't just ask for money. There's a place where you can sign up for being a prayer partner, for being just to support. Send me a message. I'm going to get it there, and that's probably the very best way to do it. If you want to just go listen to the music, go to Bandcamp. As I say, it's like JAEL.bandcamp.com/album/feeling used yet. And you can listen to that last album. The feeling used yet has to have hyphens in between the words. And it's all lowercase. You don't have to capitalize anything or worry about that. So that's it. You can go listen to the music. You can go and support the team. And if you like what we do, we'd ask you to be a partner somehow, either praying with us, giving to us, helping us out somehow so we can continue to do what we're doing. I'm not done yet. So there you go.
I remember when I learned about Jesus Christ, and they said he turned water into wine. And then they sat up there and said that, people joked about it and said that he said, well, let's go on and keep the party, going with wine.
Yeah.
So my joke to you is I have to know. So I don't want to take no more of your time, but I swear to God, I put that on the Bible. We're including God in this. This is the last question.
Okay.
Where did your name come from? We're going to
Where did
keep the party
I'm
started.
sorry. I'm not, you're a little echoey and way back. So say that
Where
again.
did your name come from?
My name is actually my real initials and spelled out, and there happens to be a Bible name. It just means that Yahweh or Jehovah is God, and that's what it means. And the God there, the word in Hebrew is judge. So God is our judge, and Daniel also has the same kind of meaning to it. And so I liked it. I didn't think it was very popular at the time. I found out since the internet's come on that a lot of people have that name, but I didn't at the time. And so I was a one-name artist for years, just as Jael, and then had to add the Musicman to distinguish myself from all the other Jaels in the world that were musicians.
Okay, well, you take care. Stay on the line. You all take care. I hope you enjoyed this show. You got 22 likes over here. So, and I got a lot of people online. So y'all take care. Be
All right,
safe. I'll
thank
be
you.
back on here
And
later.
I'll come back anytime you want to continue the conversation.
Oh yeah, okay. Thank you.
All
Stay
right.
on the line.